Hi, and welcome to Hot Springs Village Audubon membership meeting for March of 2021. Today we are excited because it's getting spring again. Last month we had that big giant snowstorm and it did a lot of emotional damage as well as some physical damage as well. But now we're looking forward to spring and the things that we get to see with regard to all of our feathered friends. Wanted to mention to you, and it'll be in your email that has the link to this video. The Audubon, Arkansas native plant sale is starting this month, and I don't have the dates in front of me, but that'll be in your email. And think about that as far as being able to get a good source for native plants. It's really difficult to do. Also, the month of March ends our membership drive. So membership for 2021, if you have paid your dues, we thank you very much. If you plan to stay a member and want to pay your dues, we welcome that through our membership link on the website. Now I'm going to ask Kathy Jurek to tell us about the bluebirds. Kathy, as you know, is the bluebird chair for the entire program in Hot Springs Village and has been for how many years, Kathy?
Since 2015.
Since 2015. So we all know Kathy as the Bluebird Lady, Miss Kathy.
Thank you, Norma. I was going to introduce myself as the Bluebird Lady also, so thank you. And I'm appropriately addressed today. I wanted to let everybody know that all of our locations for the Bluebird Trail have been checked with the exception of the DeSoto Golf Course. Yesterday, which was March 9th, I was out on the Cortez Golf Course, and unfortunately I ran out of supplies to fix things, so no more baffles or bluebird boxes in my car, thank you. So I have to wait until Adolph gets back in his little shop and starts making product again for us. Hopefully that'll be toward the end of next week, he said. So far, 16 boxes have been replaced and 21 baffles. And like I said, I could have used more yesterday. Over the past week and with the nicer weather, I've noticed a lot of activity while I was making my rounds. There were several nests being built, and believe it or not, some brown-headed nuthatch eggs were found in nests. So they're out there and they're getting started. And that means that it's time for our monitors to get out and start doing their rounds. Most of the paperwork has been sent out to all of them, again, with the exception of DeSoto, because I haven't checked those boxes. We're hoping for a great bluebird year like we had last year, and we'll keep our fingers crossed. You never know what it's going to be like. Monitoring, if you're not familiar with it, can be very enjoyable and rewarding. If anyone is interested in knowing more about it, you can. My information is on the website, and you can contact me. I could take you out on a route and show you what it's all about, and you could see if you would be interested in joining us sometime as a monitor. One of our longtime members, John Taylor, has found a very interesting website regarding monitoring and what you need to do to monitor and what you'll find as you're monitoring. And we're going to put that link on our website and also in the email that's going to be sent out. It's very interesting, and it's a couple from up in Jonesboro that has this information. So I think you would find it interesting if you're interested in monitoring. Some of you may have heard or read about the deaths to our bird population due to the snow and very cold weather that we had. And there was an interesting article in this past Monday's Democrat Gazette, and Jerry Butler from Hot Springs wrote the article, And fortunately, at the time the article was written and when he contacted me, we hadn't had any severe issues here in the village. However, yesterday at Cortez, opened one box and there were 3 dead bluebirds, and there were a total of 6 on that golf course. I think maybe because it was up in the hills and got colder that could have been the reason, but it was a very, very sad day for me out there on that course. But like I said, I think we fared a lot better than some of the other areas. If anybody has any questions regarding bluebirds or monitoring, feel free to get in touch. Again, my information is on the website. Thank you.
Now, right along with our bluebird population, of course, we love to feed our birds, all of the backyard birds. And Harry is going to tell us about where we stand with regard to the orders for birdseed. This is our semi-annual birdseed drive, and we have through Sunday?
Yes.
Through Sunday to get your orders in. You can do so on the web easily. So go to our website, and Harry's going to tell you all about it.
Hi, folks. As you recall, last meeting in February, we kicked off our spring birdseed sale. Well, this is your last chance to get in on that sale. And I know most of you are probably in need of seeds. I know many of us have run out, and the retail stores around our area have also run out. So get your orders in. We will be processing them this Sunday as our last date to receive orders. And the pickup of the seed is on April the 2nd and April the 3rd. That's a Friday and a Saturday. We had a little glitch in our sale this year, unfortunately, and it was all due to a supply and demand. And that supply and demand was caused by a combination of, we feel, the pandemic, of people at home more, they're feeding the birds more, and also the severe winter weather that we had over about 70% of the country. Well, this has all impacted our supplier. And you will notice on the website that the order form shows that the 10-pound bags are sold out. Our supplier ran completely out of 10-pound bags of birdseed and seed to fill the bags. So they are focusing on the 20-pound bags at this point. So that is why you saw on the order form they were sold out. For those of you that ordered before we got the order form changed, and you ordered the 10-pound bags, we will accommodate you by rebagging those from our 20-pound supply into the 10-pound bags. The other option is you can contact us before Sunday and upgrade your order to a 20-pound bag. There is some advantage to that this year. Our supplier again raised the prices, our cost, on the 10-pound bags. So going to the 20-pound bags, you'll save $2 or $3 and get 10 pounds more seed at a lower cost. So I would highly suggest that you consider that. And again, you will have plenty of seed, hopefully, to carry you through to our next fall sale. Again, these are the choices you have. You have the black oil sunflower, the Supreme Blend, the No Mess, No Millet, and the sunflower hearts. And again, 20-pound bags are now available. We want to take this opportunity to once again thank you for your support, your participation in ordering your seeds through us, and remind you again that the profits from our sales help fund the Hallberg Ecology Camp Scholarship Program, and also programs that you will receive during the year, such as today when you be viewing the hummingbirds. So once again, we look forward to those last minute orders. Get them in, and we also look forward to our next meeting and your participation. So thank you again.
Speaking of hummingbirds, I got all 4 of my feeders out. I know that's premature for some of us, but what I've been reading and what some of our members have shared with me from articles that they've read is because of the problems in Texas and Arkansas with regard to the weather, there's not enough plant life to support the little hummers coming in. And we're going to have a complete program on hummingbirds, but Tana encouraged us to get our hummingbird feeders out now, so that in case we've got a random bird coming, if they see that red hummingbird feeder, they're on it. So I'd like to have Michael Dollar introduce the program and tell us about what he's learned from Tana.
So what does a coat hanger and an aerosol can have to do with hummingbirds? Well, you're going to find out in just a minute, thanks to our guest speaker, Tana Beasley of the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission. But first, let me talk about next month's program. You know, spring is in the air. I've been seeing a lot of daffodils in bloom around the village. It's a great time to start talking about our native plants. We have Susan Hooks, who's with the Ouachita National Forest Service, will share with us her knowledge and experience in identifying native plants. Now, back to hummingbirds. Many of you may have seen something like this. It's called an ant guard. You hang it up and you hang your feeder underneath. You fill this with water as the ants come down. They won't cross the water. Well, Tana asked me to share with you a do-it-yourself project where you can create your own ant guard without going to the store. I did this one in about 10 minutes last night by taking a coat hanger and an aerosol can cap, drilling a hole, and then using a little bit of hot glue gun to seal it. You place the water here, you hang your hummingbird feeder down here, and it also provides a way for your hummingbirds to get a drink of water as well. So I want to thank Tana Beasley of the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission for sharing this do-it-yourself ant guard project with me. So please join me in watching Tana Beasley share her love for hummingbirds. It's our smallest migratory bird. Thank you.
It's my pleasure this morning to introduce you to Tana Beasley. Tana works for the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission, and she's at the Potlatch Conservation Education Center at Cooks Lake. Tana is known for her work with hummingbirds. She's the only person in the state with a valid federal master bird banding permit for banding hummingbirds. And so this morning, Tana has prepared some information for us about the hummingbirds, and I'm going to let her share those with us this morning. Tana, good morning. Thank you for sharing this with the Hot Springs Village Audubon Society.
Thank you, Michael. I'm happy to be here, and thank you for filming this and taking care of that end of this little presentation on there. I'm going to go through a little PowerPoint and be telling you some of the things about, obviously about each slide. There are some special things that I want to be sure that I mention, and I do have them written over to the side. So if I glance over there, it's like, okay, I'm reminding myself, be sure and say this for these people. I know some of you perhaps have been to our facility, and so you probably have seen part of or have seen this particular slideshow before, but it wasn't just yesterday that you saw it. So maybe this will help jog your memory on some of these things that I want you to be sure and do for your little hummingbirds. First of all, one of the big questions we usually have is, when do the hummingbirds come back? Hummingbirds are already beginning to get into Arkansas. We usually get our hummingbirds, they start coming in around the 1st of April. Now you can Google 2021 spring hummingbird migration map, and it will show you then where the birds are. Also, when you see your first bird, you can go back to that website and click into it, and you can give your location and the date that you saw your hummingbird, your first hummingbird, and they will enter that data on the map. So that way you can kind of keep up with where the hummingbirds are and see what's going on with them. All right, let's look first at the slide that got up now. What's the love about hummingbirds? Some people think, well, why do we really need hummingbirds? Hummingbirds are one of the 4 main flower, pollinator. And so they're very, very important. There are some plants, there are at least 160 something plants in the United States that can only be pollinated with a hummingbird. Down in South America, where a lot of the hummingbirds live, a lot of the other species, there are some 2,000 to 3,000 plants that the only thing that can pollinate that plant, that flower, is a hummingbird. So they are very important to us. There are over 400 species of hummingbirds. We only have about 15 or 16 that come to the United States. And one of them is what I have up on the screen now, the ruby-throated hummingbird. This is a little male, and you can see how they fly up to a flower and try to get their little drink out of that. Hummingbirds have excellent sight. They can see these little flowers. They fly fairly low, and they can see these flowers a quarter of a mile away. One of their favorite colors are red, the bright pinks, and the bright oranges. These are on the upper wavelengths, and they see something that we call beyond ultraviolet light. This is something we don't see, but they can detect those wavelengths, and that way they can see red things like flowers. They can see red things in your yard. And so I want to be talking about that here in just a minute. So this is our little male. First, let's look at 2 or 3 flowers here that are really, really good flowers. Carolina jasmine, of course, it's a vine, early blooming. It blooms pretty well throughout the season. And so you're going to have a lot of hummingbirds that love this little plant. Red buckeye, it's a native plant to Arkansas. It is an early bloomer. So it's already, pretty soon they're going to be putting out blooms on there, which is what the little birds are needing. They need that early food as they go along. And you'll notice that each one of these little flowers, they do not have a place for the hummingbird to land. So the hummingbird has to be in flight as he or she is getting nectar out of there. Coral honeysuckle, once again, a vine. And you'll notice the long tubular flowers. Salvia coccinea, any of the salvias are really, really good producers. We have a blue-black out at Cooks Lake that does really, really well. You can share this plant toward the end of the season. You can take little clumps of it if you want to share it with someone else. Very, very easy to take care of. Lantana. Now, this is a small little plant, or for the most part, the flowers are. And your first question may be, well, this doesn't look like the normal flower that hummingbirds are going to like. So the thing about this, hummingbirds cannot live on just nectar. They have to have protein, just like we do. And the form of protein that they use is insects, tiny little insects and spiders. The fruit fly is one of their favorite little insects. So if you have, in the summertime, if you have some overripe peaches or bananas or something like that, you can put them in a little mesh bag and hang it out, maybe closer to your feeders, certainly not by your door, and let that attract little fruit flies. and the little hummingbird catches them in flight. So this is where they can get their protein. They can exist on just insects, which a lot of them do in the wintertime. So on the lantana or flowers like this, if you look closely, most of the time you're going to see little tiny insects or little tiny spiders in their little spider webs. And the little hummingbird will also look at those little webs and see if anything was caught there, and she'll kind of steal the spider's food that's caught in the little trap like that. Bee balm, this is another, you can have the dwarf or you can have the regular one that gets really tall. Once again, an early flower, it blooms off and on all season. Very, very easy to take care of. It will spread, so be sure the area you put it in, just be ready because it is going to spread unless you contain it, but really, really good early plant. Crocosmia lucifer. This is a fairly large, mature one. You can buy this plant pretty well anywhere. It is like a bulb plant, so you can share this. And at the end of the season, you can dig the little clumps up and take your spade and quarter them or whatever and kind of move them around so you can spread it out that way. This does really, really great here in Stuttgart and out at Cooks Lake. Turks Cap. Another really, really good plant. They love this thing. It has lots of nectar in it. And be sure though, if you plant this, look how big it's going to be. I know that's a tiny feeder you're seeing in there, but that little light up at the top, you know how tall that is. So, and this comes back, it'll completely die down to the ground, cut it off. You might want to put a flag there so you won't plant something on top of it and help you remember what you have there. But it will come on back and it does really good in this area. Now, one thing the hummingbirds do love, and this is water. Now, they drink water and we think, well, they drink nectar, so why don't they get enough water? Nectar, of course, is real sticky and these little guys like to be clean. So any of these water sources you see here, you can even turn your sprinkler on in the daytime and and they'll fly back and forth through that. They can handle light rain. Of course, a hard rain, they're going to have to find shelter, but they don't mind getting wet, and they like to be cooled off and just have fun in the water, just like little kids do. Now, hummingbirds, like I said, they fly low and they look for red things in the yard. This is a house site just outside of Jonesboro. And it's also about a half a mile from the game and fish shooting area, which we have our tournaments there. So there's a lot of shooting going on. That doesn't seem to bother the birds. But do you see anything on that picture that if you're a hummingbird flying over this house area, would you want to go down and check that red roof? They can see that red roof, and so they're going to go down and check that out. And the people that live there say they have lots of hummingbirds. Their outbuildings, I don't know if you can see it. Here's one of them. You can see a little bit of red. All of their outbuildings, although they have a white top, they are red buildings. So anything red in your yard, which let me address that for just a second. Red chairs in your yard. These birds they fly low. They're looking for red stuff. So anything red that you can put in your yard now. It's not too early to put out a feeder or two. You can use, one individual has mentioned that he has lots of hummingbirds when he takes red plastic picnic plates, he nails them on a board and he lays that on top of his porch. So the birds see that red and they come down to check it out, and then he's got his feeders ready for them to go. So red petunias are a bright color of petunias. They love that plant too. Anything red that you can put in your yard right now will help them see you. Now, a couple of questions on that. Yes, hummingbirds do come back to you. They have a tremendous memory. Their memory rivals the elephant's brain as far as memory. And we know that they tend to remember a lot of things. They remember where you live. They remember where their feeder is supposed to be hanging. If that feeder's not there, you'll often see them come to the window and peer in at you, and it's almost like, hey, I'm here now. Where's my feeder? It's not hanging where it's supposed to be. Get up and get my feeder out here. They'll also do you that way if the feeder goes dry. They may kind of circle around your head if you're outside, and if they do you that way, go check the feeder. It's probably empty. But they do like to let you know about things like that. So they do come back to you. For the most part, they do stay in your area. The ones that are hatched out in your area, they're like we are. They like to go home. So they normally come back to the same general area in which they were hatched. And then, of course, your mom and dad, they're going to be there somewhere too. So they're pretty faithful to come back to you. If they get there and their feeders are not out, they have to eat pretty often. And so if you have not put your feeders out and you don't put them out for a little while, there's a possibility they'll go on and find somebody else and you may not see them again. So try to keep at least one feeder out, even starting now. The cooler weather, you can leave them out, the feeders out longer. On hot days, hot sunny days on into the summer, you probably want to, if there's anything left in the feeder, you probably want to change that about every 2 days. If the nectar starts to get cloudy, chunk it. That it's already starting to ferment and you don't want them to be drinking fermented sugar water. That might affect their flight ability as far as flying straight. So now here's our little male. All right, these guys are coming back in. They overwintered in Mexico, central Mexico, and they do not reproduce in Mexico. So everything that we have coming back now, early in the season, is going to be an adult. This is an adult male. It's about 3.5 inches long from tip to tip. We'll notice the red, the culmen or the beak. When you get used to looking at them, you'll realize it's a little bit shorter than the female. And of course, the characteristic thing that we notice about him is that red gorget or the red patch under his chin. Now, these feathers, even though they bounce a bright red light back to us, they're not red. They're kind of a charcoal color. They have special features that they can take white light, break it into its wavelengths. They absorb what they don't want you to what they don't want you to see, and they bounce back what they want you to see. So this little guy wants you to see that red gorget. So that's the color we see. But if you had one of these feathers or looked at them real closely, they're a charcoal color. Right, another thing about the male that look at the tail tips. Remember, this is an adult male. So if he's sitting on a feeder with his back to you, you can identify him very quickly by just looking at those tail tips. And whoever's with you, you can say, no, that's a male. And sure enough, when he turns around or flies off, he is a male. You can tell that real easily, and so you'll impress people and they'll think that you know a whole lot about hummingbirds, which you do. The wings are a little bit shorter than the females. So he basically is a little bit smaller than the female. Probably the wing length helps him do all of that fancy flying that he does around. That's just a guess on that one. The male weighs about, we think about they don't weigh very much. He weighs about what a penny weighs. So if you got a penny in your pocket, you can pick that up and see about how much he weighs. They're very warm. When people release them for me, many of them comment about, oh, they're so warm. And I said, yeah, they are. They have about 100-degree temperature. So yes, they are warm. Female. Here's a little female. Now, both of them have, of course, a green back. The male was a little bit brighter green, but the female will also have a green back. Her culmen, up here at the top, her little beak is going to be a lot longer than his. She's about 4 inches long from tip to tip, and she weighs about what a nickel weighs. So if you have a nickel in your pocket, you can flip that around, and that's about what she weighs. She has the creamy white chest area. She's going to have green on her head and on her back some. Now look at her wings. Her wings are almost down to her tail tips. So she has longer wings than the male does. And of course, her culmen was longer. Now, look at her tail tips. Early on in the season, remember, we have adult birds coming to us right now. So this little girl is going to have white tail tips. So if you have some birds sitting on a feeder and their backs are to you, look at the tail tips. You can pretty well identify which ones are male and which ones are female by just looking at that. And that way you can impress people that, hey, this is what I know about hummingbirds. Look at this. And sure enough, she is. Now, hummingbirds have somewhere between 950 and 1,000 feathers on their little bodies, but they have no feathers. I can find my hair. They have no feathers on this chest area. And you're looking at the picture and you're saying, yeah, she's got feathers there. They're there. Well, okay. They're fixed so that they will flip back and cover the bare area on her chest. A lot of birds, when they are sitting on the nest, they will pluck the feathers on their chest area so they can have that warm skin contact directly with the egg. It helps incubation go faster. Well, look at her beak. You know, if we were hummingbirds, our beak would be about 4 feet long and way, way too long for us to be able to pull all these little feathers out. So God just didn't give her any feathers, but he fixed the other feathers around so that they flip over and cover her tummy area. And I'll show you this in a little bit. Normally this is a test time based on what you know so far. Is this a male or female? And most people look at the tail tips and they're going, it's a female. Well, based on what you know, that was a good answer. However, this is a male fledgling. Once the birds leave the nest, the little ones leave the nest, they are called fledglings. Baby birds, baby hummingbirds do not fly. They sit in the nest, they eat, they poop, and they work those pectoral muscles. So they're getting their wings ready to fly. Their pectoral muscles may make up as much as 25% of their body weight, whereas ours make up maybe 5 or 6% of ours. So they have really, really strong wings there. As a male, this little male, one thing that we're going to look for on this little male, look at his throat. Now, we see some little lines on there called striations. These are the feathers that are going to open up and show off that red color. Now, the longer out of the nest, the more of those things will be opened up. So this is a male fledgling. And during the season, later on in the season, of course, he's going to have white tail tips. All fledglings will have white tail tips. Even though, of course, the females are going to have white tail tips anyway, but later on in the summer, you'll see a lot of white tail tips then. So then see if you can check out that neck. If you still got those little black lines there, this is probably a male. Albinos. In any population, there may be an albino. This little girl down here at the bottom, she's not dead. Well, if you can contain their wings, when you hold them, if you can contain their wings, it's just like, okay, measure me, do whatever, and hurry up and let me out of here. Why am I saying this is a little female? Look at these wing tips. They go down a little bit further than her tail tips. So that's a good indication that this is a female. So, and in a bird like this, we have to rely strictly on measurements to sex this bird. This is a shot of the band that I use. It's a 5.6 millimeter band that is, I form it into a circle and put it on the right leg. There's a letter and 5 numbers on that band. Now, unfortunately, the albino, or there's another form of this called leucistic. Of course, the true albino does not show the color. You see that in the beak and in the feet. A leucistic will have a dark beak, and they'll also have dark little feet. But these little guys, they have no camouflage, and so it's really, really difficult to get to check one that has come back. They're too vulnerable to be caught. This is what a lot of our feeders look like at Cook's Lake. And now look at this guy up here. This is a male. See how dark that is? But if we get, he's in the shades, but if you get the sunlight on him just right, excuse me, he's going to be a real bright color, just like that feeder. Now, excuse me, catching hummingbirds is a big cage like this. There's a door on one side. We have the door open, the birds go in to get fed, and then typically they go up in the feeder, and then we can reach in and get hold of them. Now, if you ever have to move a hummingbird, like it gets in the house or the garage or whatever, try to be sure that you do not put any pressure on that breastbone. The heart is directly under the breastbone, so you want to be very, very careful. And let me see if I can, all right, say if this is the hummingbird body, slide your fingers over like this and try to get the breastbone between your fingers so you don't put any pressure on that. And then you can take him and take him out and turn him loose like that. They're in this cage, they've had a little snack. Normally, like I say, they go to the top of the cage, and this way we can just reach in and release them. It is a large gauge, and they think they can get out, but they can't. So they're real easy to reach in and catch that way. Here is a sample of a strip of bands. Here's your letter and 5 numbers. The 5.6 millimeter mark that I cut is here and here, and that's the size that will fit the ruby throat. Here's a little band that I've already formed into a circle. Now it's in a circle, and I want to put it on the little bird's foot. And ladies, you know, we can put on bracelets. We can wiggle our hand and get a bracelet on. And I've asked the little hummingbirds, would they like to do that and just slide the band on there, and they're not very cooperative. So now I have to open the band up, and here's the band opened. And here is the little bird. There's a bird inside that little hose. Ladies, you'll recognize these as a little hose that disposable hose that we use to try on shoes. And so I can put that's a special needle nose pliers. And I can put that little band over the leg. And when I clamp it shut, it snaps the band to, to fit the bird. And I always check it when I get through with that. And no matter how tight I squeeze on this instrument, I can't squeeze too hard to hurt the bird. I want to be sure it has a good fit, where it goes together, where it fits together real good, and go on like that. So this is the actual banding process. There's the band on the little leg. Okay, remember I said they have no feathers on their body, on the front area. This is the tummy of a little female. Head is up here. And this is actually the formation of an eggshell. And you can see through it, through this little thin skin, when it starts to form the shell, or if it looks like the shell is already on it, you get her out of there. Because when she's ready to drop that egg, she's going to drop it anywhere like this. Banded her, turned her over to do her measurements, and lo and behold, there was her egg. About 80% of eggs that are laid do not make it to maturity. So this was one of those that did not make it to maturity because we had no way to incubate, and especially no way to feed this little one if we could have gotten it incubated. But you can see about what the size relationship is to the little female here. All right, here's a little juvenile male. Remember those lines I told you about, the little striations? We can see those real easily on this one, and we see they've already started to open up. So before he comes back to us next year, all of those will be opened up, and it will be bright red, just like his daddy was. Here's at the end of the program, I asked for volunteers to release the birds. And so when I put the little bird in your hand to release, they may or may not sit there. They may fly off immediately. And this lady that is releasing here is one of our Audubon ladies from Pine Bluff. And look where she's looking. She's looking at her hand. Where's the bird? There the bird goes off away. So it's a very, very quick, and you know it's going to happen, but you're still going to jump when it happens. And it's a really thrilling. It's really thrilling every time they're released like that. Okay, quickly, where do they come from? Here's mama. I'll go through. This is about a 21-day span. Here's mama, and you can see kind of what their little nest look like. The nest can be 5 to 50 feet up in a tree. Normally, she does not build a nest within 100 yards of a active feeding territory. So, when the little female, a little bit later on, when the females get here, and you think your bird population goes down, the little female is going to be sitting on her nest pretty well most of the time. she'll run in and grab a drink and go back and sit on that nest. So that's why your population may appear to dwindle once the females get here and get their nest built, because they're sitting about 80% of their time, they're going to be sitting on that nest. And here's the little eggs. She's going to have a little soft stuff in that egg. When the little ones hatch out, this is a little hatchling. She'll lay one egg one day, and then 2 or 3 days later, she'll lay the second egg. So normally they have two eggs like this. They can come back to the same nest and refurbish it, or they can build a new one altogether. But they are federally protected by the migratory laws, and so actually it is illegal to have even a nest like this that's empty unless you have a permit to do so. So here's our little guy, gal, whatever. All right, they're growing. Mama went out to get food, and you notice at first they don't have the long little beak like we think of a hummingbird. It's just like a regular bird, but it'll start to grow. All right, they're growing, getting bigger. See how long the beak is now? They do not poop in their nest. They'll sit on the edge and let it fly out to the side of it, as you can see around that nest. And about 21 days, after about 21 days, probably the first bird that hatched out is the one to leave first. And then this one is mama's over there somewhere calling and say, come on, get out of that nest. I need to talk to you. For about 2 weeks, they can hang out with mom, and she'll feed them at first, but then she shows them what to do, how to eat, where to go. And then all of a sudden, after about 2 weeks, it's like, okay, you're on your own. Go, get out of my feeding territory. I got another set of little ones to go raise now. She'll have 2 clutches of birds, so probably she will have 4 birds per season. Sadly, about 80% of these birds do not make it to maturity. So, too many things, anything bigger than they are can eat them. They run into glass, they run into windows, pretty well anything like that. Now, at night, the hummingbirds do not fly. They go find a little perch. Usually it's about maybe 10 to 12 inches from the end of a little stem. It will support them, but a predator it will not support. And they'll go to this place, and their body systems cool down. They're not using much energy at this point. It's almost like an overnight hibernation. They're going to lock their little feet on that limb, and don't try to move them from it, because you'll break their feet if you do. This little bird, you can see the blue on the outside, that represents the part of the bird that has cooled down. They will appear to be dead at this point. Inside, you see the yellow areas, that's the heart, the brain, and the intestinal area, and that's kept warm by the body. Then the next morning, they'll start to stretch and kind of wake up, kind of like we do. And then the first thing they want to do is go eat. So they'll go find them some food somewhere. Sometimes, remember I said sometimes they'll be hanging upside down. If the wind blew that night, this little guy is still, this little gal is still in torpor, but leave her alone. She's not dead, and she'll wake up in a little bit and realize her world is upside down, and she'll have to fly and get rid of that. The Rufus hummingbird is one that we often overwinter here in Arkansas. Normally it breeds in Alaska, but the last several years they have been coming back around. They come down the West Coast, go to Mexico, and then come back to us somewhere in Arkansas. So we've banded several of these birds. Remember, they don't have to have nectar. They can make it with insects during the wintertime. If you do put out, I hope that you'll leave a feeder out during the wintertime. Of course, you don't have to change the nectar very often. You can put a light like this on it to keep it from freezing. Or the little light that you put out like at Christmas time to illuminate Santa Claus out in the yard. That's enough to keep these feeders from freezing. This particular one was, if you know anything about Little Rock, it's in the Heights, Markham and JFK, along in that area. So right in the middle of Little Rock. Here's another one that was off of JFK, 21 degrees that morning. And they've got the feeder hanging above a little coffee or It keeps your coffee mug warm or your candles melted and all that. It does not touch it. It'll melt it if you let it touch. We had to wait for the snow plows to clear the road so we could get to this little bird, but it was a little female ruby throat. What are predators? Do I have any? Yes, I do. The robber fly, of course, frogs, green frog. Bass will jump up out of the water when the little hummingbird is skimming along the top of water catching insects. A bass can jump up and catch them. Of course, cats. Even though you may feed your cat before it lets out, that when you let them out, well, that's just what cats do. They hunt. The dragonfly, and it's like one of the big green dragonflies. They can actually wrap their wings around the hummingbird and hold on to it until it dies, and then they've got food. If you ever got hung up in that yellow garden spider web, I mean, they're even tough for us to get out of. And sometimes they can get hung up in her nest, and that's not good for them either. Any bird that's bigger than they are, the sharp-shinned hawk is real hard on them. Blue jays, they'll eat the eggs, they'll eat the little ones. If they can catch the adults, they'll eat that. I mean, anything bigger than they are is after them. And then there's also an insect. Here's our praying mantis hanging upside down on a feeder, waiting for this little guy to come in and get a drink. The praying mantis will reach over and lightning fast, clip the neck, and then they go for the brains and the entrails. Now, sometimes late in the afternoon, you think you have a bunch of little hummingbirds flying around your flowers. Sounds like hummingbirds, but actually they're members of the clear-wing moth family. They're an insect. So insects, remember what they have? Insects have the little antenna, and then they've got the proboscis that they're going to use as a straw. Here's some common ones you might have seen around your yard. And that life cycle, you might recognize that one. Now, if you want to see tiny, tiny, tiny little hummingbirds, which, hummingbirds are little anyway, you can go to Cuba. These are some residents. This is a different species of hummingbirds that live in Texas. Everybody look at your thumbnail. These little birds are about the size, they're just a tiny bit bigger than your thumbnail. I mean, these are like the pencil. You see the relationship of how big that little bird is from there. A penny, you can see how big they are next to a penny. And then, of course, there's your thumb that some of you were looking at, and it shows that. And here's another one more shot of them. Storms can blow them inland. So we do have some recorded instances of these little birds getting blown inland. And I'm not sure that they stay. If they get a chance, they may go back to Cuba. I don't know for sure about that. And I cannot even imagine a type of band that you'd try to put on a bird like that. So not a whole lot of data on the little hummingbirds. So these are some of the things that we talk about when we have our little hummingbirds out at Cooks Lake. One question we usually have is, how do I clean my feeders? Feeders can be cleaned very easily with a gallon of water, warm water preferably, and a fourth cup of Clorox. You can let your feeders soak overnight in that, and then they're real easy to clean off the next day. We can still smell the Clorox. That doesn't matter to the hummingbirds because they can't smell anything. So, don't let some salesman try to sell you this beautifully blooming plant that smells really good. It's going to collect you a lot of hummingbirds. Hummingbirds can't smell that. It's just there. It's something to sell it to you. So remember, they're going to be looking for the red things in your yard. Let's see, what else we need to say. Oh, hummingbirds cannot walk. If they get on something, they can kind of shuffle and slide maybe sideways a little bit, but as far as just walking around, they can't do that. Their little feet they're strong enough to hold on to a little limb, but they're not really made so that they're good for walking. And then too, if they were made for that, that might be a little bit of extra weight that the little hummingbird would have as they flew around. Can see they can't smell. When you make your nectar, look at your hand. You've got the recipe right there. 1 part sugar, and this is table sugar, the same sugar that we eat, to 4 parts water. If you use warm water, it'll help melt the sugar quicker. You don't really have to boil the water. I mean, this is water that you drink, so there shouldn't be anything wrong with it. And so try to remember 1-to-4 ratio. Some people think, well, if I put a little bit more sugar in there, I like things a little bit sweeter myself. Yeah, we like things sweet, but if you get the nectar too sweet for them, it makes it a little bit thicker than what their little tongues can handle. Their little tongues are sticking into that little flower nectar, and they absorb the nectar and pull that back in, kind of squeeze it out and swallow to the tune of 12 to 15 times per second. 12 to 15 times per second. So first of all, do you remember somebody making your real thick malt and they always give you a little tiny straw? Yeah, you can get something out of it, but you're having to work at it. If you make your nectar thicker than that 1-to-4 ratio, that's what you're doing to the hummingbirds. And most of the time they're flying while they're eating. They're not sitting there like we are. So try to kind of remember that. Also, there is some evidence that if you over sugar them, that this is hard on their kidneys and on their liver, kind of just like us when we get into too much sugar on there. So 1-to-4, no matter when it is, 1-to-4 ratio, and you've got this. If you make it, if you measure it with a cup or 1 cup of sugar, 4 cups of water, if you make just a tiny bit, 1 thimble full of sugar and 4 thimbles full of water. So your 1-to-4 ratio, no matter what you're measuring in. Okay, Michael, did you have a question? Let's see if I had anything else.
Thanks, Tana. That was really interesting. Hummingbirds they've just captured the interest of people everywhere. People are putting up their bird feeders. When is a good time to put them up? Do we start now, later in the summer?
I would go ahead. I've got one out now in my yard because I live in Stuttgart. I got real excited last year. I had 4 hummingbirds at my house here in town. Usually I have maybe one that comes and drinks, and then he, she, whatever, they over the fence, they go to somebody else's yard. Of course, at Cook's Lake, we fill our feeders pretty well every day, but yeah, you need to at least get 1 feeder out now. And as cool as it is, you don't have to fill it all the way up, just put a little bit in it. Your nectar will be fine in the refrigerator, at least a couple of weeks. So, you just don't have to make a bunch of it right now, just enough to lure them and get them started to come in there.
So we have a hummingbird that guards our feeder. It won't let any of the other hummingbirds feed from it. Should we add more than 1 feeder to let the other birds feed?
Yes, that's a good point. Of course, I said the males come in first and they kind of mark off their feeding territories. And, a lot of people don't like the fighting that goes on, but think about all the animals in the world, and even maybe sometimes people. At some point, they may be called upon to defend their food source. And that's just what these hummingbirds are doing. There is some evidence that they will let their females feed there and they don't bother them, but then the females may turn around and run them off. The male, once they mate, they do not stay with that female. They go on and find another female. So they don't mate for life like some birds do. But the little males will be, and the females eventually will be guarding those feeders like that. You can try spreading the feeders out to maybe 10, 12 feet apart. Put one around the corner so that they can't see both feeders, or put, front and back of the house.
Okay.
It seems to be the position of the feeder. And I've tried this. I noticed one little bird was defending this full feeder, and there was the feeder next to it a few feet down that was almost empty. So I went out, I was watching while I was eating lunch. So I went out and switched those feeders. And that little guy continued to defend that same position, the feeder that was there. It didn't matter to him that it just had a little tiny bit left in it. And so, you know, you can try that too. You can switch them around and,
Okay.
do that. But it's just something that they're going to do. Just like have lots of feeders. Right now, remember, get something red in your yard. That'll help them see you. Gosh, there was something else I just flashed by. What was it?
Well,
It'll come to me after we finish.
I was curious, you know, they have, they'll swarm around the feeder, and there's different names for these flocks of hummingbirds. Hummingbirds usually are loners. They fly, they travel by themselves. But people have come up with all these names for a flock of hummingbirds, that like a bouquet of hummingbirds, a tune of hummingbirds. I don't know if that's just local lore, or if it's really a scientific name for it.
I've heard some different names like that. I just call them a bunch. A bunch of them out there. Just put some more feeders out on there.
Okay.
But yes, normally they do when they migrate. They do migrate. They can migrate singly. They leave our Gulf Coast and fly across the Gulf. It's about a 18 to 20 hour flight nonstop. You know, there's nothing to eat out there. And they can go by themselves. They can go with some other hummingbirds. They can even fly with other birds. In these flocks, they can actually see on radar. They can track flocks of birds going like that. They do not. There's a folklore that says that they ride on the back of geese or something. And that's they do that. They like to be down close to the ground. Geese fly real high where it's colder, and hummingbirds don't like to be that cold, and it just doesn't work that way. So they do their own thing like that. So no, they don't.
The banding program, people, when the hummingbirds fly south, do you have people down in the south area that actually catch the birds and will record them there? Or is this just a United thing in the United States that we do?
We do. I've had some birds that were checked on the coast of Texas. Now, they don't always fly across the Gulf. Sometimes maybe one's coming in late, or a real young bird or an older bird. They may not feel like they're ready to make that long flight. So they'll go along the coast of Texas, and they eat as they go. And I have had some birds checked there. I have not had any birds checked up above, north of us. If for some reason you are able to see the band on a hummingbird, and a lot of times it's when they're deceased. If you can Google Bird Banding Lab, and it will bring up Bird Banding Lab in Maryland. And there's a little place on there where you can report a bird. You click on that, and then, of course, all different kinds of birds are recorded or can be recorded there. So you click on hummingbird, and you'll give your location and the date. And then just almost immediately, it comes back up on the screen. It looks like a certificate, and it tells you when the bird was banded, where, and who banded it. So you can print that off and have your little certificate. That information is also sent to the bander. So that way, if we have birds that are checked, we know
Follow them up.
Going a little bit like that.
Well, thank you so much for your time today.
Sure.
Like I said, hummingbirds are such a fascinating bird. People have just captured our interest, and you have certainly shared some information that's helped us understand them so much more. So Tana, again, I appreciate it so much. Thank you for sharing with us this morning.
Most welcome. Yeah, I love to talk about hummingbirds, and I rarely even go to Walmart that somebody doesn't ask me a question about hummingbirds. So I love to talk about them. So thank you. Thank you for having me on today.
Yes, thank you so much.